So Jin, first of all, where are you from?
I was born and raised in the city of North Miami Beach, myself. Family originally from Hong Kong, but yeah, hometown is Miami. North Miami Beach, 305.
Cool.
Grew up next to Pitbull.
Cool.
I just made that up. I didn't grow up next to Pitbull.
I was
But
like,
if I had to make up someone to grow up next to, I don't know why, but Pitbull was the first one to come into my mind. What is he?
because he
Like,
yells it in every music video.
Mr. International, yeah.
Yeah.
Yo,
So-
it's crazy. I mean, Miami definitely has a lot of signature things about it. You know, whether being a tourist destination to maybe the misconception that it's only a tourist destination. It's such a city with diverse and rich history, and yeah, I wouldn't change it for a second in terms of being born and raised there.
Cool. And so, what was your father's occupation?
My father and my mother both immigrated to this country around the same time. So it was probably late 70s, mid-late 70s. So as far as my father's side, from Hong Kong to the States. And initially, I think, I don't know. I mean, I think being that school and academics wasn't his strength and forte, I think what ended up happening was just a career path that a lot of kind of Asian Americans or Chinese Americans of that generation ended up going into. Chinese restaurant.
Yeah.
So I mean, it started out originally working at someone else's restaurant.
Right.
To ultimately, I think, which is the goal for most families, to owning your own restaurant. So as far as I can remember, I mean, I, for the most part, grew up in a Chinese restaurant. So I think the first one that they owned, I was about 6, 7 years old.
Right.
And just to paint a clear picture, I say the first one they owned because ultimately they ended up owning 3 of them.
Nice.
But not as in, we have 3 restaurants, but as in they opened one, business wasn't really all that, closed that down. All right, let's, try to take out this other loan. Restaurant number 2, didn't do well again, closed that one down. All right, let's see where else we can kind of scrounge up some money and try this again. And, you've heard the saying, third time's the charm.
Yeah.
But in this case, it was kind of the opposite. The third time was when we, I think, collectively as a family realized that maybe this isn't the business direction to go in. And it wasn't a lack of hard work. I mean,
Right.
I don't think I appreciated as a youth, but man, my dad and mom were pretty intense hard workers.
Cool.
Yeah.
So your whole family was in this. Did you have any siblings?
I have a little sister. I'm about 7 years older than her, so I mean, my little sister isn't even little anymore. But obviously, she'll always be like that little girl that I used to hold her hands and take her to Toys R Us. But she's getting big. I'm proud of her. So yeah, I mean, to kind of tie it all in, she for the most part grew up in the restaurant the same way I did, and I think it definitely was a big thing for me looking back now to have a sibling. I think the fact that I was already like 7, 8 years old when she was born was cool. I definitely looked at her as kind of like a playmate, right? Someone I could play with, even though I was much older than her, and she wasn't a boy, but I still remember a lot of fun, vivid times of playing swords with her with newspapers.
Right.
And the coolest thing was, as she got a little older, she was kind of like my little servant too, Oh, give me the remote control. Oh, give me a Coke. Give me give me this, give me that.
Right.
And hopefully now, the person that can fill that role is my son, which he's starting to do. The other day, I don't know if any other dads or moms out there, would take me up on this challenge, but I challenge my kid to your kid in terms of efficiency with retrieving a remote control. And I put my money on my kid. I mean, I guess every dad would put the money on their kid. But this guy is, man, top notch with the remote control retrieving.
Yeah.
Like,
Ultimately,
literally, it's getting to a point where I can just look at him, look at the remote, and he knows already.
Yeah. And ultimately, it's you guys that win too, eh?
Say that again?
It's the parents that win
Oh,
too.
yeah. And I'm trying to cherish this as much as I can because,
Cool.
it's only a matter of time where he's going to realize that,
He's being conned.
he's being conned. But he enjoys it now. I mean, there's
Yeah.
he's 2.5. There's that sense of fulfillment that, you want me to get that for you? I got it, right? He doesn't verbally say it, but the look on his face when he hands me the remote is a look of accomplishment. And that's great to see on my 2-year-old's face.
Yeah. So He sounds really well behaved.
Mhm.
Were you a really well behaved kid?
I wouldn't necessarily put him in the well-behaved category.
Okay.
Not that I have many 2-year-olds to compare him to,
Yeah.
but I get the feeling that he's very much, you know, like your average 2.5-year-old in terms of behavior.
Right.
Has his moments where he'll break down, and you're like, what are you breaking down for,
Yeah.
right? I think we've all been through that.
Yeah.
Some like to use that term, the terrible twos, but I would never want to refer to my child as terrible in any way. So I
Right.
don't even bring that word up when it's in regards to him. But I mean, if you ask me, do I see a hint of myself in him? Definitely. You know, maybe not in terms of like well-behaved or not well-behaved, but even at 2.5 years old, I look at him and personality-wise, you know, I was a relatively active child, whether it was 2 years old or 10 years old or 16, right? Active in the sense of like definitely more outward than inward.
Right.
And I see him as that too. I see him as being a relatively kind of happy-go-lucky type of guy,
Right.
even at 2.5.
Yeah.
And I mean, even though I've had like some really down moments in my life,
Right.
moments of being discouraged, being bitter, being frustrated, if I were to assess the whole journey, I think it was relatively more upbeat. You know, even in the face of those down times, I tried to look at it with an upbeat, you know, perspective.
Cool.
And he strikes me as that. So hopefully that's something he could carry as he gets older.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's dial it back a bit to when you were first exposed to hip hop.
Yeah.
So not just music, but
Yeah.
as a culture.
Woo! I'm glad you put it like that. I think there was definitely 2 defining stages, you know, as you mentioned, first being exposed to the music of it, rap
Right.
music, and then kind of the eureka, it's a culture, like there's so much history to it. There's, you know, there's this whole, especially at a young age, I think there was definitely a very organic infatuation and fascination with the idea of what hip hop is. The 4 elements, you know, DJ, the MC, B-boys, graffiti, you know, and being 14 and 15 and feeling like I want to master all these things.
Right.
So on one hand, I'm like trying to do a windmill. On one hand, I'm like, yo, mom, give me the turntables. I need the turntables.
Yeah.
And then on one hand, trying to draw the graffiti in my little, you know, composition notebook. And then ultimately the one that ended up being the path, you know, for myself, I guess, you know, picking up that mic and exploring what that really is, what it means to be an MC. So to revisit it, I think, I wouldn't say this was the first song that I ever heard. Probably wasn't. I couldn't pinpoint what it was. But the first song to really pull me in terms of the music aspect of it, I've shared this before. I love sharing it. LL Cool J's Mama Said Knock You Out. Yeah. I think for anyone that's in my age bracket, they'll probably be like, word, yo, when that song came out during that era, the music video, he's in the boxing ring, the beat, the lyrics, everything about it was captivating to a 13-year-old. Just the raw coolness of it and the idea of, yo, everybody loves, you know, ladies love LL.
Right.
The dude, you know, but he's coming with these hard battle rhymes. And then, so that was like the first song, Mama Said Knock You Out.
Right.
And what I mean by that is, what I mean by that is, I vividly remember that, if not the first, it was definitely one of the initial songs that made me compelled to sit down with the tape and try to write down all the lyrics so that I
Right.
can have it, memorize it, throw the paper away, rhyme along, and just be like, yo, look at me. I know the word. I know all the words to Mama Said Knock You Out. And that was pivotal, and that was critical, and that was a big milestone. Because I think as far as from the music standpoint, that was the first time I felt so engaged with music, not even just hip-hop, but music. In terms of the culture aspect, I think it just naturally kind of progressed in that direction. Because at 12, 13, I think I may not fully have had a grasp of what these MCs and these lyrics are really conveying. But I think by 16, 17, I'm listening to everything that was out at the time, from the East to West Coast, down South, especially being in Miami. But listening everything from, you know, on the West Coast, the Dr. Dre's and the Snoop Dogg's and the Dog Pound and West Side Connection, you know, and that's just me kind of listing stuff that I was listening to the stuff that definitely had more of an impact on me stylistically, and also just as far as I was starting to develop my craft, a lot of the staples of that late 90s, early 2000 East Coast, the Jay-Z's, the Biggies, Nas, Wu-Tang, Mobb Deep, the Redmans, Naughty by Nature, and then even as I think, yeah, around that time, it definitely transitioned into a stage where lyrics were a really big thing for me.
Right.
You know, lyrics were a big component for me. So, you know, like stuff like Outkast, stuff like, I could list it forever.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
Cool.
a song actually that I released probably 8 years ago now. I released it about 06, 07 roughly. A song called Top 5. And the concept of the song is, you know, who's the best MC, top 5, dead or alive. That's the premise of the song. And all I'm really doing in the song is listing all the MCs that have ever influenced me in some way. And the point of the song is there really a top 5? I mean, this is a conversation that's been going on forever.
Right.
And I was 16,
Yeah.
and here we are now 16 years later,
Yeah.
and it's still going on. Every
Yeah.
year there's a list, top 5 MCs. And obviously, you know, they create these lists with certain things. Who's the most influential? Who made the most impact in terms of the music industry?
Yeah.
And those are all valid criteria, but at the end of the day, it is a very personal and subjective thing. Like if I look at you and I tell you, yo, Big L is the greatest MC ever, and you look at me and you say, no, it's whoever you want to say it is,
Yeah.
There will never be a clear-cut winner.
Cool. So tell us a little bit about the first rap battle that you ever did. Like, take us back there. Like, where were you? Who was it with? Do you remember any verses you used? Did you win or lose? Take us back to that moment.
Well, I remember vividly one battle. I don't know if it was the first or not, but I'm led to believe that it is because it left such an impression on me.
Right.
I'm just trying to clarify with myself that as the years went by, this is not something like that I'm just like kind of a figment of my imagination because it seems like a cool story,
Yeah.
which I don't think it is. But the first battle that I was ever engaged in was probably a battle that I didn't even know I was engaged in. And this was in the cafeteria in junior high school. So I would say probably 7th grade, 7th to 8th grade. And that was also the time where, other than just copying down the lyrics and mimicking, you know, the rappers that I like listening to, it also transitioned into a period or the next chapter, which was me writing my own rhymes. And as I'm writing my own rhymes, naturally, you know, I'm engaging in the different things that are happening in school, which is like the talent shows, right? So I'm
Right.
performing at every talent show that they have, and also the ciphers, right? And because, you know, we're talking like 15, 16 years ago, so obviously it was something that was such a, you know, like you could, if you came to my junior high, which I'm sure is really the same now, even 16 years later, and you ask any given kid, yo, who are the guys that rhyme in this school? For the most part, they'll be like, oh yeah, lunchtime or after school, there's always that guy, that guy, that guy, that guy, and that guy.
Right.
So me at 15, 16, or 13, 14 in the 7th grade, 8th grade, I was one of those guys.
Right.
So just at every cipher, in every cipher, for the most part, I'm probably the one that's bringing the little boombox with the CD and the instrumentals or the tape instrumental.
Yeah.
So one day in the cafeteria, we're doing these ciphers like we always do. And this guy, we're taking turns rhyming, he starts incorporating me into his rhymes, and not in a good manner. And how do
Right.
I know?
Right.
Because he's basically like, yo, Jin, you know, you just another chin.
Yeah.
You can't win. Look at your grin. I don't know exactly what he said, but I do remember the context of it being, even as early as 7th grade, 8th grade, there was definitely references to my ethnicity. So along the lines of, yo, on the mic you ain't nice. You should be in the kitchen cooking us some fried rice. I don't know. I'm paraphrasing, but to that effect. Now, believe me when I say, what struck me the most wasn't necessarily the fact that he referenced, you know, my ethnicity or poked fun at that. What caught me off guard was the fact that he was coming at me in that way. Because I'm in the cipher and I'm just like, you know, I'm like, how do I mean, offended is a strong word. I don't want to say I was offended, but I was more just caught off guard by it.
Right.
I was, because this is my first time being exposed to what I would later find out is a rap battle.
Exactly.
A freestyle rap battle. So as he's doing this, yo, Jin, look at your kicks, look at your shirt. Obviously, the other MCs and the little crowd that has gathered, they're listening and they're like, oh, Jin, he getting you, he getting you, he getting you. And I'm in the cypher just like overwhelmed, bewildered. I'm like, what? So of course, it comes back to me and it's my turn to rhyme. Yo, and I'm in a blank. I'm like, because it didn't dawn on me right there at that second that at the core of freestyle battling is a very simple thing. Is, yo, you diss me, I diss you. Obviously, on a more deep level, there's things like, you know, being clever, wordplay, and creativity. But at the core of it is just, man, I'm just, you know, it's just me belittling you and you belittling me in whatever manner possible. So as it comes back to me, I'm not really grasping it at that moment. So I'm just like, I'm rhyming, but I'm not really saying anything that's pertaining to him. So in that sense, to answer your question, that was my first battle, and I pretty much got demolished. You know what I mean? Because I had not developed the nature to rhyme about someone yet. Prior to that, all these rhymes that I'm writing or whatever, I mean, I can't say that I was oblivious, because, you know, I mean, I'm telling you, I'm listening to LL Cool J. So at the core of it, even a song like Mama Said Knock You Out, it's braggadocious. It's talking about how great you are, right? Don't call it a comeback. I've been here for years. So I have that component, you know, bragging how good I am, etc. But the idea and the concept of specifically targeting you, yo, Herbert, if your favorite dessert is probably sherbet, I'm about to make your nerves hurt. You look like a nerd, jerk. I don't know.
There's another obvious word you didn't rhyme, so I'm very happy you didn't rhyme.
Okay, well, yeah. So I was just trying to make a point, which is at that moment in that cafeteria, it didn't click that this is the nature of this sport. But it clicked very soon. So around that same time, as I discovered this thing called freestyle battling, it became my world. So it was like, if I put it like this, where hip-hop was already my world, like at that point, hip-hop culture, it was my world. It was my universe. But on top of that universe was one more special universe, and that was battle rap, freestyle battling. So this is like, mind you, way before YouTube, way before Twitter, Instagram, and all these different things. So the only way we could really engage in it, and you know, way before 8 Mile, the movie. So it was something that was very like, yo, it was like this thing where if you knew about it and if you were a part of it and if you engaged in it, there was definitely a feeling of like, you know, you treasure and cherish it. And I don't think I realized it at that point, but from that moment on, I think the freestyle battling thing kind of became my way of kind of, I don't want to describe it as gaining approval, but I think it definitely was looked at for me as a way of obtaining credibility. There's a difference, right? So I'm not here to battle for your approval. I'm here to confirm that, yo, I do this. Right?
To validate it in a way.
To validate it in a way, absolutely. Now, at that age, I don't think I realized the significance of what my ethnicity would be a factor, like that it would be a factor. Yes, it was something that was thrown in my face constantly again and again, but I don't think and this may be a good thing, I never dwelled on it. Whereas, you know, as the years went by, you know, especially even after I got a record deal or now, you know what I mean? Or I just came from doing an interview before meeting up with you with this like Chinese radio station. And one of the key things that he asked me was just, so yeah, I mean, just knowing about your history, how did you deal with all the years in the battles? You know, these guys are talking about fried rice, Mr. Miyagi, you know, Chinese people of this, Chinese people of that, pretty much as obscene, as derogative, as racially insensitive as possibly can be. But never for 1 second could you say something back to them about, you know, their culture or their ethnicity. Because, you know, because it's just a double standard in that way. How'd you feel about that? And it wasn't until I got older and really looked at that I realized, man, it's great that it wasn't something that I always had a chip on my shoulder about, you know? Whereas even in some cases, what I like to put a lot of focus on these days, I like to be intentional about it, is actually the battles that I've lost over the years.
Right.
And I've lost some pretty like intense battles. I'm talking about freestyle battles.
Right.
And there's even some cases where people look at those battles and they try to make a defense case for me, which is, yo, come on, Jen. If you were to have said anything about him being black, or anything about, his race, it would have been over for you. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't even see that as a loss, Jen. You know what I mean? And they're making up this excuse for me. Meanwhile, I'm thinking, maybe not so. Maybe the guy won fair and square. But the idea of winning fair and square is also very, like, abstract, too, because it is so subjective. You know what I mean? But those battles that I lost, I, from my perspective, I think were the greatest things to happen for me. Because I think those battles, especially losing in such an intense way, it just popped this kind of fantasy world that I was living in for a long time, and in some therapeutic way, it was like a release.
Yeah.
Because for the longest time, I was so rooted in the idea of being this battle rap phenomenon that it really defined my worth as a person. And those two experiences, I mean, I'm not saying I've only lost 2 times, but the 2 that I'm thinking of, and probably people that follow battle rap know the 2 that I'm referring to, they were just like very harsh reality checks.
Right.
But I love those.
Yeah. So,
nothing like a harsh reality check.
Yeah. So I think we're slowly running out of time.
Yeah.
So there were, you covered a lot in that, stream of consciousness. And I think that, there are points there. This is a 2-part question where,
Go for it.
On one hand, you're in New York City, or you moved to New York City shortly after.
Yeah.
And, everyone kind of knows you for like the Freestyle Fridays from 106.
Yep.
And you signed Rough Riders after that. And then, it seems like it all kind of slipped from your fingers.
It fizzled.
Right? And so you talk about that in other interviews already, but,
Yeah.
The first part I want to ask is how it felt and what you would do, like what you would say to yourself if you were, if you could just be beside yourself like 10 years ago, and then like.
Oh, that's such a good question.
Yeah.
Okay, so I like this 2-part question, especially the second one, which is what you would say to yourself. What was the first part again?
So that was the first part actually. No, that was the first part. So the second part is like the flip side, which is like, we kind of like have to fast forward past Hong Kong, but looking at post 1459,
post 1459,
and definitely like you can touch on Angels here as well. But post 1459, like what, if this really is your final minute, what are your plans for after? What's your vision for the great company?
Final second, even.
Yeah, sorry, final second. Yeah, right.
Okay, well, the first one, I can answer it pretty concisely.
Yeah.
Which was when you were saying, like, looking back on the ups and downs in the journey and how the Rough Riders thing and everything after that fizzled out.
Right.
What would you say if you were able to be by your side of yourself during all of that?
Right.
One simple thing is everything's going to be okay. That would be the first thing I would say.
Right.
Because I think at one point, as it was unfolding, that was the biggest thing that was eating me up.
Yeah. Was
just feeling distraught and feeling like life was falling apart. So if I could go back and encourage myself in some way, I would say everything's going to be okay. And that's kind of like just, I think, something that anybody watching, for yourself or anybody, it's something that seems like a relatively simple statement, but there's a lot of power in it, right? And when you use it to encourage someone sincerely, it might do more than you realize. You know what I mean? Even though it is a very, once again, it is an abstract statement. What does that mean? Everything's going to be okay. But if you look at the scope of life and all the things that we go through, hey, everything's going to be okay, right? So in regards to kind of fast forwarding through Hong Kong, what now after 1459 and from this moment forward? I think I've never had more clear of passion, a more clear of, I guess I could say, like a direction of what my passion is. And what that passion is I think at the core of it, man, it's people. I think that's something I overlooked for many, many years. All the years of chasing the record deal, chasing the fame, chasing approval, chasing these various things, I overlooked one thing: the people. the people that were contributing to these things coming to be, right? The people
Right.
that buy the CD, the people that
Mhm.
support, et cetera, et cetera. And now it's almost like the complete extreme shift is my focus is on the people as opposed to those things. So the things I mean I have this this mentality of just and it's rooted in the 1459 project, which is what do you do with your final second? In the context of the album, I'm talking about the 15 minutes of fame,
Right.
but it's applicable to just life in general. If this was my final interview ever, what would I want to say? What would be the lead? What would be the final comment that I would want to leave? And the main thing is that it's not necessarily like looking at life or your career or your relationship in a dreadful, like kind of morbid way. It's actually the opposite, which is cherishing it. You know what I
Right.
mean? So whether it's an interview, whether I'm sitting on the carpet playing, Thomas the Engine with my son,
Right.
it's like, dude, cherish this.
Right.
Cherish it. Yeah.